This video will cover basic page editing. Your website basically has three areas of content that you can edit: the header, the page, and the footer. And up in the dashboard we have the corresponding buttons for those areas. So whenever we want to edit one of those areas, we simply click the button for it. And a few things happen here. The button you selected turns blue, so you know what area is in edit mode. Also, the area that's in edit mode is surrounded by a glowing blue outline. The buttons in the menu bar disappear to prevent accidentally clicking and leaving the page when you're in the middle of editing, and the rest of the dashboard becomes active. This area of the dashboard is for page content, so it's only active when one of the content areas is in edit mode. The other buttons are for universal functions that don't deal with page content, so they are always active. And you can switch to editing a different content area by clicking the other buttons. And to turn off edit mode completely, just click the button that's currently active, and it turns off. Now, as you can see, the page is pre-filled with some sample text, and every time you add a new page, it will have this on it. So let's click to activate the page area. If you notice the dotted blue outlines, you basically have an outer box with two boxes inside of it. This is called a table, and the boxes inside are table cells. It's sort of a grid system that will help you keep all your page content neatly organized and looking professional, and we'll cover that in the next video. For now, I want to go over some basic editing tools. If you've ever used a word processor like Microsoft Word or Apple's Pages, some of these tools should look familiar. Now, as you know, the arrow that you move around with your trackpad or mouse is called a cursor. But when you click somewhere, you end up with a blinking line that represents where your next actions will take place. So if I start typing, that's where my letters will go. And that blinking line is called a caret, not to be confused with a carrot. So whenever we say caret, we are referring to that blinking line. Okay, let's go ahead and click and drag our cursor to highlight some text. And we can make it bold, we can italicize it, or we can underline it. Let's highlight some text over here. And we'll add a strike through. And if you notice, the dashboard will always show you what styles are applied wherever you click. So if I click over here, it shows me the styles. If I click over here, it shows me the strike through. And if I click here, I have nothing because no styles have been applied. I can also remove styles by highlighting the text and clicking the currently applied styles. So if I click underline, it removes the underline. If I click it again, it applies it again. I can also click the red X and it removes all formatting applied. And the text goes back to normal. Okay, now let's add some color. If we go over here, we have a color picker. And as we click different colors, we see the changes immediately. Let's select some other text and make it a different color. Now again, when you click on some text, it will show you the current color in the box up here. Now let's look at the color picker. This top section is called the color palette. The first row is your preset colors from the template designer. Let's take a look. The first box in the color palette is your default font color. Now if you change this in here, it's not only going to show up in the color palette, but also will change all the font color on your website. Down here, we have your custom font colors. When you change these, it doesn't actually change anything on your website. It just changes the other four colors in the top row of your color palette. These up here. And the reason we have these is so you can maintain a consistent color scheme throughout your website. You don't want your site looking all crazy with the 57 different colors all throughout your pages. The second row shows your history, the colors you've previously used. And this will store up to 10 colors, so you may also have a third row. And if you have a custom color that you know the hex code for, you can paste it into this box and click Save to Palette, and it will add it to your palette history. Also, the check mark shows you which color is currently being used on the selected text. Let's select some other text. We can also change the size of the font. We can make it smaller or larger. And just like the other styles, when we click somewhere on our page, it shows us what size that text is. If it just says size, then it's the default size. But if we click back over here, it shows us what we have it set to. And if we want to remove the font sizing and go back to the default, we just highlight it and click on the currently applied size, and it removes the sizing. We can also change the font style, and we'll go up here to select a different font. And whenever we select a font, it applies it immediately. And if we want to remove the font styling and go back to the default, we click Arial twice, once to select it and once to remove it. Now the fonts we have in this list are called web-safe fonts. That's because every computer has these fonts installed, so they will show up on every browser. But it's very limited, so we've included the ability to add some custom fonts to your site. So let's go back to the template designer. At the bottom, we have some custom fonts that we can install. What this does is download that font to your page so that it can be displayed to your visitors even though that font is not installed on their computer. Now the limit is 3 custom fonts, and you really don't want any more than that because too many fonts on a web page will make it look sloppy. So let's go ahead and install a couple. Now we save changes, and then show changes. Oh, wait a minute, we have a warning. Do you want to reload the site? Changes you made may not be saved. Remember, clicking show changes reloads our page. But if we reload our page, we lose all the work we did because we never saved it. This is a safety feature we installed, so you don't accidentally leave a page or reload it without saving your changes. And some browsers offer you the option to prevent this page from creating additional dialogues. Make sure you never click this option, otherwise you're disabling this safety feature. So if you spent a half hour making changes and left the page without saving, you will have lost all your work. So never check that box while you're in the dashboard. Also, don't rely on this feature, because some browsers may block it anyways. So always save your changes. In fact, you should be saving your changes periodically as you edit your page. Try to make it a habit so you don't lose your work. Okay, so we are going to click Don't Reload. And then we're just going to close this window and save our changes. So now we can go ahead and click the reload button in our browser to reload the page. Okay, let's click Page to put it in an edit mode. Let's select some text. And now when we go to our font list, we see our 3 custom fonts added at the bottom. So let's click and see what they look like. Now the purpose of different fonts is for specific places. You don't want your font to just randomly change in the middle of the paragraph like this, so let's take it off. But we can jazz up a page by applying some unique fonts to page headers, and that helps to make it stand out. We can do it throughout the page if you have section titles also. Okay, couple more things. You can change the text alignment by clicking these up here. You can set it to the left, center, right, or justify. By default, it's set to justify, which simply means that the text is made to line up neatly on both sides of the page. Now if you click Align Left, it lines up on the left but not the right. If I click Right, it lines up on the right but not the left. And if I click Center, it lines up in the center. And if I want to remove the alignment, I just click whatever is currently set. Right now it's Center. And there you go. We have it set to justify by default because that's the standard whether you're looking at a book, a magazine, newspaper, or whatever, and it just looks clean and organized. If you notice, the page title was not affected when we changed alignments. That's because the alignment only applies to that table cell, and since the title is in a different cell, it has its own alignment, and we can change that too. Now there may be times when you want to have sections of your page where text or other objects are centered and other text is justified. So you would just create new table cells for those different sections, and we'll cover that in the next video. And we can also do bullet points or numbered lists. Now I want to quickly touch on the HTML CSS button. This is basically for advanced users. This will show you the background code of your page, and it does have a search and replace function. And if you click the CSS button, you can add your own custom CSS code. Now if you're not familiar with HTML and CSS code, you probably shouldn't be messing around with these. Also, if you ever click on one of the tools in the dashboard and for some reason the dialog window doesn't show and all you see is the dark overlay, there is a black close button in the upper right corner so you can get back to your page. Oh yeah, and if you make a mistake anywhere on your page, you can just use the undo button to step backwards. And if you go too far, you can use the redo button to step forward. And that's it for basic page editing.